Welcome to Motivation U, the podcast. My name is Bob Ganzak. Welcome to Motivation U, the podcast. Again, my name is Bob Ganzak. We come to you every week live from Spurrier's Gridiron Grill at Celebration Point inside the coach's podcast room. Today, my guest is at his home office as I am at my home office. But Zach, our producer, is right there in the coach's podcast room at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill, manning the controls and bringing us live to you. So my guest today from Dale Carnegie Training, welcome Matt Thompson. Good morning, Matt.
Good morning, Bob.
Matt, I asked you to come back and be a part of this because you've been going through an experience for the last few weeks of another Dale Carnegie program. For people that don't know Matt has had a long career in manufacturing, safety, a lot of different areas that are really phenomenal. Great leader, great mind. And then he joined us at Dale Carnegie, a while back, and he's starting to claw his way through the Dale Carnegie world. First as a student in the Dale Carnegie class, then went through the Dale Carnegie Winning with Relationship Sales, has gone through our foundational team sales class, has been a graduate assistant 20, 30 times. I'm not sure how many times anymore. And now he's on another path through the leadership training for managers, which is a solid program for supervisors and leaders at all levels. So I've asked Matt to come in today and talk about some of the differences between the Dale Carnegie course, the leadership training for managers, which I will refer to as LTM. We teach people not to use acronyms, but we are the kings of acronyms. LTM. And just how he's seen the changes and how it's affected him. So, Matt, welcome, and please say hello.
Well, thanks, Bob, for the introduction. So, when I was looking at taking the LTM, it was funny. I actually had a talk with Jimmy Casello, our associate, and told him that, hey, I've been a leader a long time. I've had teams of 2 to teams of several hundred. And I never went into it thinking I'm not going to learn something. What I told him is I want to find out what holes I have, right? Because I've always wanted to get better. I'll tell you, I have taken so many leadership training courses that you could almost stand up and just spout out all of the keywords, right? This has been different from day one. What I love is that it takes everything I love about Dale Carnegie and teaches us to look at ourselves first as a leader, because I think that a lot of leadership really it's all about either people or processes, right? Whether they consider themselves a leader or a manager or wherever their title or their ideology really falls. This has brought it together. We talk about people, and then we go into the processes and then how they tie together. I couldn't imagine what it would be like to work for leaders who have had this training in the beginning of their leadership career, as opposed to me, who I've been through a lot of my leadership, and now I'm changing into the Dale Carnegie world. Could I imagine what it would have been like to have this my first or second year of leading? It would have been amazing for me.
You you've got a couple of more things coming down the road for you, at least one that I can think of, that opportunity, and they may overlap. We have that high impact presentation program coming up in November, like 15th, 16th, or 16th or 17th, someplace like that in November. And we may squeeze you into that program too, because that's a 2 day. Then you'll have the entire portfolio of the leadership, the Dale class, the sales program, and the high impact presentations, which is kind of like a black belt. You've
Right.
gone through all of the programs. And when you look at that LTM that you're in right now, what do you see as the differences between that and the Dale Carnegie class?
So the Dale Carnegie class, I always like to say that has been my foundation. That is the foundation that I have built everything since I've started this journey off of. How to I love that we teach not only when you first meet somebody, everything from remembering their name, all the way through building that conversation, and then getting to know them, and how we think about how we are, and then how what we can do to help them get to a better place. All of it is about that relationship. With the LTM, what I'm noticing is it's based in that relationship. We talk about that. We go through the principles, but then it also looks at the process, but the process from a way of the people who are under us as leaders. They're building the world. The one thing that I love about this is, people support a world they help create. That we hear that every class, and we hear it several times. So the LTM is about telling leaders it's okay. It's okay to give that power over to your people, but here's how you do it effectively.
Mm-hmm. And that foundation, I love that. When we did a lot of work for like 6-7 years at Northrop Grumman in St. Augustine, they referred to the Dale Carnegie class as the foundation. That was the foundation class. And as we know, in if you compare it to house building, Matt, every house has a foundation.
Mm-hmm.
We don't think of it. We take it for granted. We don't look at it. Yet every foundation is different. And, some are thicker. Some builders take more care when they pour the foundation, as far as it being level or whatever, that attention to detail. And the Dale Carnegie class is the same way. And as you know, as an instructor, I always use that analogy in class at the first night. And the reason I do that is many of the things that we teach in that Dale Carnegie class are things that we take for granted. Just as you mentioned, how to communicate with somebody, how to have a conversation, remembering somebody's names, putting a smile on our face. All so many of those things are so like, yeah, I do that. I do, but it's the difference between that builder that lays a foundation that you can build a mansion on, and that person that lays a foundation that in 5 or 7 years you're going to be calling somebody because you're going to need foundational work. And there are a lot of companies out there that all they do is repair house foundations that were not laid correctly or were not a solid build. The same thing happens in people. When you get that foundation of the Dale Carnegie course, and you go through that, it's like that meticulous builder. You now have a solid foundation that you can build a mansion of a career on. You can build a life that you really, truly can add all the bells and whistles. And the ones that skip that part, usually somewhere down the road, they're searching for that online, that that person's selling some program on Instagram that this is going to make you rich in 2 days, right? Change your life in 2 hours. Here's my click funnel. Jump in and watch how I can make your life change overnight. Nah, doesn't happen. Doesn't happen.
Not at all.
So that's why I'm glad you brought that foundational thing in. That's really, really cool.
One thing that I noticed too, now that I'm on this side of Dale Carnegie, when I'm talking to a client or a prospective client, one thing that I hear so much is, well, I don't need that. I have people who work for me who need that, but I don't need that. Now, I have been through a lot of classes with you and Fred and Tim. Not once at graduation have I ever heard somebody say, "Oh, I didn't learn anything in here." They're all amazed by, again, those holes that we all have, because it doesn't matter how long we've been a leader. It doesn't matter how long or how many classes we've taken. There are always going to be those little spots that are blind to us. And the Dale Carnegie course just shines a light on those.
Yeah.
And it's not us in the back of the room, and it's not you guys in the front of the room. It's the people in the room working together that really just shine those lights on each other. And it's amazing. I love being a GA because, from the first class to the last class, just the transformation is amazing. I love watching it every time. And there's not one time that I went, "Oh, I wish they would have transformed a little more." No, it blows me away every time.
I always say that, look, I'm just a conduit of Mr. Carnegie's work, the book, the things that Dale Carnegie and Associates have built over the last 111 years, to the person, to the company. That's all I am, is that conduit. And nothing more important, nothing less important, just the delivery system. But you and I are involved in a class in Gainesville, which graduates this upcoming Thursday. Right now, a week from today, they graduate. That was really tough. We had a lot of people in that room that didn't want to be there.
Right.
And a lot of people that were fighting the class, that were outspoken and talked down about it in front of other people, and I don't need this, and I don't want this. And I'll be honest, it's one of the tougher classes that I've ever taught. But we are trained that's another point of Dale Carnegie and Associates and Dale Carnegie training, is that all of our instructors are highly trained to be in that room for situations like we have encountered in this one. The amazing thing to me was Tuesday night. The solid group that they have become, the 180-degree changes in attitudes in some of those individuals. I mean, 14 for 14. There's 14 people where there were missing a couple of people in the class the other night, but people that were gung-ho from day one. But the individuals that were there the other night, 100% of them were so focused, excited, enthusiastic, and sincere in their deliveries and everything. So when you talk about transformation, it was fun to watch this group totally change.
It was. What I loved was the one person in there who was vocal about, I don't get inspired. And that's the person who won the outstanding award for the inspirational talk.
Yeah.
So that person inspired everybody in that room, and it was just eye-opening. It was eye-opening to me, and I know it was eye-opening to them.
Mm-hmm. And that to me was that I think every person in that room registered when he said that, and then 5 minutes later he wins the award.
Right.
But the thing about that was he could not find a talk to give on inspiration, because so many times what we do in in any of the talks we give, and you and I have talked about this before, we talked about it the other night, is we're searching for the right talk instead of, as my instructor way back in 1991, Linda Ketterer taught me, give the talk you should give. Give that talk that you should give, not the one that you think's going to win you an award or you. And he reached in and talked about his wife,
Right.
and as he even said, it's something that I should tell her more often. How proud he is of her, and what she accomplished, and although it was an extremely uplifting, positive, inspiring talk, I mean, I had tears in my eyes when he was telling us the story. I mean, it was absolutely wonderful. So, just helping people search their soul, their heart, their mind, their core, to communicate the right things is part of the challenge.
Absolutely. Every week I have somebody who calls, texts, or emails me and says, I don't know what to talk about. And just within a couple minutes of talking to them, oh, I got it. I know what I'm going to talk about now. Sometimes we just need somebody else to look at our lives and say, okay, look at how inspirational was that? So I love that part of what I do as a GA, to be able to interact with them.
And you and Doreen and Jose in the back of the room, and Hartley when she comes back to us from Koss Olinger, you all you mean so much to the class. You mean a lot to the instructor, whoever the instructor is. That graduate assistant means a lot. But really, you mean so much to the class, especially the way we've set it up in Gainesville, where all of you are graduates of the classes that I've been the instructor in.
Right.
So you can kind of cushion some of the things for them and make that happen. But yeah, it just a wonderful thing. And I think of this program that we've had, and I, in my years of being an instructor, I've had quite a few programs like this one, where you just have a mix of so many different personalities. We had one gentleman come in week one that some people would have probably said, why is he here? And he was kind of pushed to be here himself, but a very skilled speaker, a very humorous speaker.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had another person at the other end of the spectrum that couldn't even stand up and give her name, not an act either. I would watch her legs shake in the front of the room, and I was afraid that she was going to fall down. And what they've both discovered is something inside of themselves that they can tap into. The one individual, he has polished his skills, become a more, I don't want to use the word humble, because I'm not saying he was not humble, but his delivery is much more professional, polished. Polished is the word I guess I would look at. And also the way he looks at other humans now, he a little different in that area that I see. My observations. And the other person gave an outstanding talk.
Oh, wow.
Just to be able and give that talk, and the smile on her face as she realized that she was doing this thing that she swore she couldn't do, right? What do you see as the differences between the LTM and the Carnegie class for you?
So for me, the LTM doesn't go into that initial getting to know somebody as much. We learn that about knowing our employees and all that, but it doesn't go into that strong foundation of that conversational foundation. It doesn't go into that as much as it goes into, okay, these are people who are working with you. Here's where we're going to start off. And the first session is about us, and it opened my eyes so much, just the time wasters. I realized, I say this and I'm embarrassed about it because I should have realized it before. I'm on the road on average 5 hours per half hour that I'm spending face to face with somebody. Now, how ridiculous is that? Right. And it's not because, I wasn't thinking that, oh, I'm going to run here and run here. No, it was because I was allowing outside forces to dictate my schedule instead of me stepping back and saying, look, this is my week that I'm going to be here. Let's do this and put things in perspective that way. It just completely opened my eyes. And for it to do that with me, I can imagine what it would do for other people who, their time wasters aren't going to be that dramatic, but those little ones are going to see they're going to add up to that. And that's the first class, and usually when we go through any training, we're like, the first class is a throwaway class. It's not. I mean, we hit the ground running, so I love that. But I love also that it's people and then it's processes. They're separated, but then you get that integration of them. So, whereas the Dale Carnegie to me is all about people. It's all about that human relation. It's all about, getting that deeper relationship with people, not just that you work with, but people in general. This is very specific to, okay, at my job, in my capacity as a leader with my team, how can I make that relationship stronger? How can I let them understand they are the most important people to me? And then what processes can I put in place to not only allow them to make the decisions, but to do it effectively? So, it's amazing. It's an amazing course.
We're talking with Matt Thompson, Dale Carnegie Training, Jacksonville, Tallahassee, Gainesville, Lake City, Live Oak, Valdosta, Tifton, Douglas, Waycross, all over the place. And we're really talking about the leadership training for managers and the Dale Carnegie course and some of the differences. You mentioned, Matt, we manage processes, we lead people, and that integration is so important. As you get into innovation, I want to jump back. I want to jump back to that time wasters that you were talking about. What are some of the things that you found were wasting your time?
So a lot of them have to do with me doing what I'm strong at and then trying to push off what I need a little more improvement in. So I do a lot of the operational tactical stuff that needs to be done, but maybe can be done at a more opportune time. Right. Especially with us, with being business to business, there's certain hours of the day that need to be our focus on the client and on prospective customers and things of that nature. And what I tend to do is fill that with operational stuff and then go at the end of the day, oh, I need to make some phone calls. So it's that procrastination that kind of seeps in without me knowing it, without me realizing it. But it by putting it down on paper, and actually writing it out. And I treated it like a call log or a driving log, to where I just wrote everything down. It's the small things. It is taking a half hour for a break instead of 15 minutes just because I'm at home. I can do what I want to, right? Well, no, not really. I have an obligation to the people who I work with and the people who are sitting there waiting for me to change their lives.
Yeah.
So it was
prioritizing.
Really yeah, absolutely.
So. Yeah, I see that. It's amazing to me that the amount of time that and the wear and tear on us mentally and physically that both you and I spend in our vehicles, which and you can go on and say, well, you can make phone calls from your truck, your car or whatever, and you can do this. You can't. you're not giving, you know, when you do that, you may be solving your problem, but you're not doing the right job in solving the person on the other end of the line's problem. You owe it to them to be focused.
Right.
You know? And that, that's been a big challenge, as you know, for me as we work together, is just the amount of time, that you spend on the road. It's absolutely, amazing. And that LTM helps you take a look at that. You haven't gotten into the interview yet, have you?
A little bit. Yeah. We
A little
talked
bit.
about it a little bit. Yes. Yes.
So you'll actually be doing that coming up in the next week or 2 weeks. That is an eye opener also. I know that is a tool. I realized when I went through the program, Matt, that I had always done that. I was always a curious person. I like to get to know more about the person other than just what they did at work. I wanted to, and a lot of people block you away. I was in the broadcast industry, which for some reason, I don't know if it was the mechanics of the type of people we were and the type of people we hired, but there was a lot of people that wanted to put up a brick wall between you and the man or management or whatever they called it at the time. That interview was a tool that helped you get through that. Now, I didn't call it the interview. I learned, because I didn't go through the LTM until like 2009, 2010. But there's certain questions you learn that helps you cut through the clutter. And, and that's really a, important part of it. And when you learn that, you're going to have a lot of fun with that. Especially the two guys that you've told me about that are in the class with you. You guys will practice that over and over and over again. And it's amazing to watch things open up.
We learned, like I said, we learned it as a tool right now. We haven't gone in depth with it. But what I do notice is in my previous careers, I've done a lot of hiring interviews, and the ones that we could get past just the, where did you work? What did you do? And really get into, why do they do what they do? Why do they like the hobbies they like and all of that? Those were the solid candidates. That's where you found your solid candidates. Mm-hmm. And then, so carrying that over into everything else that I do is going to be really strong, because we can change people's skills, we can change their knowledge, but it's really hard to change their values. So understanding their values really helps.
It's funny because I've shared with you my quadrant of interviewing people, the four things that, and I started out of necessity. I didn't have any book that told me how to interview somebody. And all of a sudden my boss said, we want you to interview people there. It wasn't just in the sales staff too. He would have me sit in on other interviews. And I got sick of the question, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Oh my goodness. We were hiring kids right out of college. And where do you see, I was married with a child, and I'm thinking to myself, I have no clue where I'm going to be in 5 years. How does this person walking out of Michigan State going to know where they're going to be in 5 years? I mean, I was like incredulous about that. But there was things I wanted to know, how they felt about themselves. I wanted to know, how they got along with other people. I want to know if they had the skill to do the work that they were coming in to do. And the fourth thing is I want to know what their passion was. What was their purpose in life? What did they want? And so when I learned the interview, I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. I've been doing a variety of that, but it helped me really make that stronger. Matt, we're going to take a quick break here. And when we come back, I want to go into some questioning. So I want you to start thinking over the next 3 or 4 minutes. Like, if people in your past that you worked with or worked for would have been exposed to the Dale Carnegie class or the leadership training for managers, what would you have projected a change in their career have been? So I want you to think about that.
Okay.
This is Motivation U, the podcast, coming to you live from Spurrier's Gridiron Grill at Celebration Point. We'll be right.
Jeffrey, what are you doing?
Well, I'm joining the band, of course. Since Meldon Law is the official law firm partner of the Florida Gators, I want to help.
Dad, we're litigators. Let's stick to helping people in the courtroom.
Well, can we still hang out and jam a little bit? At Meldon Law, we won't back down.
Looking for more reasons to celebrate? We have them here at Celebration Point. Enjoy some of the newest additions to our already celebratory lineup, like Dave & Buster's, Les Macarons, and Prime and Pearl. There's always a reason to celebrate. Join us anytime for any occasion. Celebration Point, where Gators come to celebrate.
Thursday, November the 16th, come celebrate the release of our Spurrier's Gridiron Grill Lugo's Risky Rum. This exclusive release features a special spread of our farm-to-table food, rum cocktails, raffles, and a meet and greet with me. Each ticket includes a bottle of Spurrier's Single Barrel Select Risky Rum. And I'll sign the bottle if you'd like. So get your ticket before they sell out at spurriers.com.
I love that ad that we saw. Welcome back to Motivation U, the podcast. My name is Bob Ganzak. With me is Matt Thompson. It was fun seeing the old ball coach up there at upstairs advisors on the rooftop in that ad. I really like that. I almost as a backdrop to here, I've got a picture of that exact where he was standing, and I was going to drop that in as my backdrop. I wasn't sure what the legalities of that was, so I own this company, so I felt comfortable putting it up behind me and letting that be there. Matt, right before we went to break, we were kind of talking about people that you've worked with or worked for in your past. Again, it's a projection, it's an opinion, without naming names, but think of situations or positions that you have come across, and what journey or trajectory would their career have been differently if they would have learned the things that you learned. Can you share some of those stories or people with us?
So one that I think of that I believe this would have had the most impact on was actually very successful in his own right. He was at the rock mine that I worked at. He went as high as he could go before he graduated, or before he didn't graduate. He retired.
That's a graduation.
It is a graduation, right? What I think of is really how many of the people who worked for him could have excelled had he taken this. Either one of them, the LTM or especially the Dale, because he was very much command and control. And he would tell his subordinates every single day, do 1, do 2, do 3, do 4, every day, to where they didn't have to think. And then he retires. And none of the people who were there in those positions are there anymore because they did not understand how to think. They didn't understand why they were doing what they were doing every day. They didn't create the world they lived in, so they left. And I think of where they could be now in their careers had he been able to translate that into, here's the result that we need. Let's find this path together and let them on a daily basis be a part of that. He would get to where when I worked for him, we had trucks that ran every day. There were large haul trucks, and we had drivers. And we would have to give him a list, and he would move drivers to specific trucks. Well, this is a little slower truck and slower driver, so let's do this and this. And he did not appreciate the fact that I knew what he was doing. So when I would go to give him my stuff, he didn't have to worry about it, but he didn't appreciate it because he wanted to worry about it, And I think, wow, if he would have went through the LTM, and if he would have been one of those, people who was the facilitator of his world instead of the creator of it, I can't imagine where some of these people would have been, because they are amazing people, very intelligent, very good at what they do. The only people who didn't realize that were them. Now, a lot of them went on to other places, but they ended up dropping 2 or 3 roles back when they went somewhere else, and they've had to build themselves back up.
Yeah, that is oh, wow, you just said a mouthful there. I think I see this picture, our minds work in pictures, by the way, Matt. I see this picture of an employee just getting young person coming into a new career, a new job, and getting teamed up with the wrong supervisor. I liken it as an analogy to a rookie quarterback in the NFL having the wrong head coach or the wrong offensive coordinator. Think of Tua down in Miami. Brian Flores was his first head coach, and Brian Flores basically said that Tua was a bust. Brian Flores gets fired. Mike McDaniel comes in, and all of a sudden, Tua blossoms under this young, forward-thinking, offensive genius. How many people come into a rock mine that could have a wonderful career, that could learn different things and grow within that organization or that company, but they get the wrong supervisor. They get the Brian Flores, the defensive-minded coach, and you're an offensive-minded player, and they never blossom. And when you said that, that just jumped into my mind to see that. I think of in the radio business, we encountered some incredible talent, announcers, because my stations were always, down at the beginning of people's careers. And I thank the Dale Carnegie class, because many of our managers went through that, so that those young people coming in as new talent were treated in a way that they could find themselves, that they could find their skill, that they had time to, we're in this, drive-through window, instant gratification world right now. They're going back to football. There used to be a time when quarterbacks would sit on the bench for 3 or 4 years, and then they would come in and they had time to show their wares. Now, these rookies come in, and if they're not killing it in the first 6 games, social media has got them as a bust. And just because you play football does not mean that you're still a 20 or a 21 or a 22-year-old young person. Just because you're a football player, it doesn't make you 45. You're still 21 or 22. So when somebody talks trash about you, it's easy for us, baby boomers and Gen Nexters and everybody else to say, oh, he's got to be stronger, tougher than that. He's got to have a better attitude. Yeah, that's easy to say, but you're not there. And the same thing happens in the business world. Somebody comes in and they don't perform the way they're supposed to right at the beginning, no matter what the role is. And all of a sudden, leadership is talking about them about, maybe we made the wrong mistake. But when you train that leader, they have a different opportunity in coaching that person. So, I don't always sit back and think of what you just said. That's incredible. How about you had mentioned this to me in a conversation a while back, that supervisor that doesn't want to take the program, that will point the finger at their employees, but won't point it at themselves. Tell me about that, what your mentality about that was and how you've seen some people like that in the past.
Well, I think that one issue that I've come across, and this is before even my Dale Carnegie training or in my Dale Carnegie world experience, is that the people who need this type of training the most are the ones who do not think they need it at all. They're the hardest ones to get into this class, and they end up sometimes either never taking it or being that hostage because somebody above them says you're going, right? And it can be deceptive because we think, hey, you know what? It kind of like with me with the LTM. Hey, I've been a leader a long time. I know what I'm doing. I just happen to have opened my eyes to the fact that knowing what you're doing and being the best you can be are two different things. What is hard is when that supervisor is in that position to put their people there and can't think past their own career, is what I like to say. They are just worried about what's my next step, where am I going to go, what am I going to do. They don't realize that you can't make that step without your people. Just as we pull people up as we go up, they're pushing on us. If you don't have your people loving you and pushing you up, you're never going to go anywhere. And they're the people who are stagnant, who feel that I should have been this or I should have been that. The truth is that we are the facilitators of our own lives. Our lives are a culmination of the decisions we make, and we say that in our personal lives all the time, but it's that way in our careers also.
It is.
So the other part of this too, what can really be deceptive are the nice guys that I like to call them, or the nice people, those nice bosses, because a nice, good person does not always make a good leader. And the person that I was talking about before was a phenomenal person outside of those gates. Very generous, would give anybody anything, got inside those gates, and just that complex of, we used to say the only one that didn't know that he was the boss was him. So he had to prove it every day, right? It's insecurity.
Yep.
So when we can get past our own insecurities, when we can get past the fact that we're worried about our career and start worrying about the people who work for us, start lifting them up, there's nowhere we can go but up. And the way to do that is to learn those foundations of good relationships. Learn those foundations of becoming a facilitator instead of a creator. And man, I cannot imagine where people can go in their careers.
When you were saying that, you remind me of a story that I met in one of my classes, a lady whose husband was career military, and he often went out on deployments, very often, and they were long deployments also. And they had kids, and every time they would go on a deployment, he would go on deployment when he would go overseas. they'd go to the store and they would buy like 1,000-piece puzzle. And he would take one of the pieces of the puzzle and put it in his pocket and take it with him, and carried with him every single day. Everywhere he went, that piece of puzzle went with him. And the family, while he was gone, would put together the puzzle. And the puzzle wasn't complete until Dad came home and put that final piece in the puzzle. That's kind of, to me, what you're saying about the leader. When the leader is a piece of the puzzle, that's important, and how do you become a piece of the puzzle? We want to tell people to put the puzzle together, but the leader is a part of the piece of that puzzle. And that's what the people, they want, they want that. And the unfortunate thing is, Matt, and, I've seen leadership for many years now, over 50 years. The unfortunate thing is, you can't blame that person, man or woman, because that's the way they were treated. And that's in many instances, the only example of leadership that they've ever had. And because of the insecurity, a Bob or a Matt or a Jimmy walks into their office and says, hey, we can make a shift here for you. You can have a performance change. We're going to have an emotional change, behavioral change. It equals a performance change. You're going to have a performance shift in your team when you invest in this program. But because of that insecurity, they say no. One is they might lose control, they think. Two is they might have to take the class themselves. And I'm going to have to stand up in front of a group of 30 or 25 or 35 or 15 people. I can't do that. I don't want to do that. So they say no. And they keep on shooting themselves in the foot. It's an amazing thing. How about people that you have seen, like at West Fraser, company you work with, how they're, in the last 2 years, how their careers have been ignited because of their association with the Dale Carnegie class?
So I can tell you that at one of their mills that we had a profound impact on their Lake Butler mill, right? The general manager who took the class, who was the highest achievement award winner, who took the class independent of most of his people. He's now a regional manager, and several people in his facility have moved up or got the courage to say, I do not like what I'm doing. Can I do something else? And he was open-minded enough to say, what would you like that to be? And then they shifted within that mill. We get, especially in manufacturing, if you're good at something, you're good at it. And that's what you're going to do. So to have the courage to say, I may be good at this, but I really don't want to do it. That's one thing. But then to have that strength as a leader to say, okay, I hear you. What do you want to do? What can we try? Yeah. That's where it comes together and is amazing. I was told one time by a welder, I had asked him to teach me to weld. And he told me, if I ever see you learn how to weld, I'm going to take you out back and you're not going to come back over here feeling good, And it was like, because in his mind, once you learn how to weld, you're a welder, and that mentality in manufacturing is strong.
Yeah. That person you were talking about became the regional manager. There's two things I want to say about that. One was the fact that he encouraged his son to go through the program. And we had his son in the class too. And to watch dad and son at graduation and how the two of them had just grown, not only as people, but together, the respect and support that they had beforehand. I'm not trying to say that Dale Carnegie created that, but just that additional volume of that was incredible. But you mentioned that Lake Butler program that we did, and to me, it's kind of like they went through the strictly business program, 3-day high intensity, 3-day Dale Carnegie. And you give us your team for 3 days, and we'll give you your team back with a completely different outlook going forward, and that's what we did there. We did it with LSF.
Right.
I love that 3-day, time-space learning has its value. I mean, it's incredible, but it's almost like jumping into an ice bath. After a workout, you work out and then you go into the ice tub, right? You look, you just got to do it. So you just plunge in and go. And that 3-day is such the intensity is so real. And that West Fraser team, Lake Butler team, man, they just, you saw it in the individuals. And not everybody was from Lake Butler too. Remember, we had a couple of people that came from like over in
you had some from Perry, some from Maxville, right?
Yeah, the Tallahassee area and the
right.
Panhandle. That was really, really man, we need to do more of those.
Well, what I like to tell people about the strictly business is, if you give me your employees, I'll hand you back a team. Yeah, because a lot of times we hear, my team, my team, my team. Well, they're your team, but are they a team? And there's a big difference. That's strictly business, especially what we saw with like LSF. Wow. For a team of people who, especially in today's remote world, that work together but have never met each other.
Oh, that was incredible, wasn't it?
For them to get into a room and find out about each other. And then what you have, and not in that class as much as some of the other classes that I've seen, what you have is people who, for some reason, just rub each other the wrong way. Well, now they sit in this room, they learn about each other, they find out why they have those
9 hours a day.
Yeah. Right. And then boom, now they go, okay, this is a person, and just like me, they're not perfect, but it's okay, and they gain respect.
Man,
I couldn't imagine what it would be like to have a team of people who went through this class together underneath a leader who went through it with them. I had 2 different clients ask me, should I go through the class with my team? My answer is always yes, as long as you are going through it with your team in order to grow. That would be perfect. As a leader, you have a lot of power, right? So make sure that, you stick to the idea that they're there to grow, and don't bring anything inside there, outside of there. And wow, you are going to truly come back as part of your own team.
You remind me when you say that just what you just said there, of the HCA of Florida, Lake City Hospital. We have hospitals in all towns, and for Jill Adams, Mark Robinson. Mark was the CEO at the time of the hospital many years ago, and Jill was the COO/CFO. They invested in their team. I mean, 40 of their top leadership went through the program. It grew to be over 100, well over 100. But the culture change that they made was incredible. And the fact that both Jill and Mark went through the program with them, 2 people that had impeccable personal skills, impeccable. I dare you to find 2 people with better personal skills than those 2 individuals. 2 people that were enthusiastic, innovative, speakers, and they went through that program with their team, and it was transformational. I mean, I'm in the business, I'm in the franchise. I work for Dale Carnegie and Associates. I work for Dale Carnegie Training. I work for Mr. Carnegie because what he does, that's the way I look at myself. So I'm a little biased. But if there's a hospital out there, and every hospital has culture challenges, you want to make a difference in your team, take the blueprint that they did in Lake City, put it into your establishment, and watch what happens. Watch what happens. Transformation.
So, when we talk about training, one thing that happened in the last class in Jacksonville that has happened a few times, but it was really apparent there. We had a young man who went through just out of college, and in graduation, his grandfather came in. His grandfather took the Dale Carnegie course 50 years ago and had put every one of his kids through. And now this is the oldest grandchild, and he's going to put every one of the grandchildren through. Wow. Because it made that much of an impact on him 50 years ago. I talk about my great grandfather who, I found a Dale Carnegie pen after he had passed. I found the Dale Carnegie pen in a little packet of stuff that I got. And it just opened my eyes. I went, that makes so much sense. Now I know why he was the way he was, and this has been around, a lot longer than any of us have been, right? And it's been making an impact on people's lives that long. So to think that it wouldn't make an impact now on somebody is almost egotistical, right? Because look at all these people who've went through before. You can see the influence. You can stand in a room, and if there's one Dale Carnegie graduate in, you will feel it. You'll see it in that person, in the way they interact.
Remember Abby's grandpa that came to graduation when we did the graduation at Comfort Temp in Gainesville, and Abby's grandpa was there. It was a graduate, like 1960s or whatever it was. That was like, wow, just to listen to him talk, of his experience. And as I told the class the other night, as we begin that one procedure that we do in class in week 7, when that gentleman from Purina, who had gone through the class in the early 70s, brought all of the cards with him. He had kept them for all those years of the words that the people had said about him. You burn that in your soul. You become that and so much more with that type of conviction. It's a phenomenal program. I'm glad that you're going through the LTM. What are your goals? We got like a minute, just like in 60 seconds, Matt. Give me a magic formula talk about what your goals are for that LTM.
So as I go through the LTM, I'm of course growing, and I'm of course learning. What I really want to do is open my eyes to how, when I'm sitting in front of a leader of people, how I can use the skills I'm gaining to make them better. We will make a better world by making better leaders. That is my goal. That's my only goal at this point. And it doesn't matter how small or large the company is. I will use the skills I'm gaining and the knowledge I'm gaining to use this phenomenal attitude that I've been given towards Dale Carnegie and change their lives. Yeah. That's it. That's what I'm here for.
I've watched you now for a couple of years on this journey, and phenomenal. The impact that you've had on your cousin Quaid, on the people around you, even the people, your dad, your sister. It speaks volumes of who you are as a person, and I'm blessed to be associated with you in this company and organization. I appreciate you very much, man. Really.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me. We'll do this again in a few weeks. For our sponsors and everybody else involved in the program, Zach, Freddie Wiebe, Coach Spurrier, coming to you live from Spurrier's Gridiron Grill at Celebration Point. This has been Motivation U, the podcast.